Imagine a place so secure, so carefully designed, it has never had a single escape in over 30 years. A place where the world's most dangerous criminals are held, yet violence has almost disappeared. This place is real, and it's hidden in the mountains of Colorado. In 1995, something extraordinary opened in the small town of Florence, Colorado. The locals didn't know much about it at first. All they knew was that a massive concrete fortress had appeared in their quiet town, surrounded by security measures unlike anything they'd ever seen. They simply called it the prison. But this wasn't just any prison. This was ADX Florence, and it would become known as the most secure prison in the United States. Before we go any further, if you want to discover the secrets of this incredible place, hit that subscribe button right now. And drop a comment. What do you think makes a prison truly secure? Because what you're about to learn will change how you think about security forever. Now, let's go back to understand why this place was built. In the 1980s, the U.S. prison system faced a serious problem. Regular maximum security prisons couldn't control certain inmates. Some had connections to criminal organizations on the outside. Others had escaped from supposedly secure facilities. A few even continued their criminal activities while locked up. Prison officials realized they needed something different, where planning an escape was pointless. They began planning a new type of facility, studying prison designs from around the world and consulting with security experts, architects, and psychologists. They called it a Supermax prison. After 12 years of planning and construction, in November 1994, ADX Florence opened its doors. The facility is a fortress. Motion sensors, pressure-sensitive detection systems, 12 guard towers, and laser detection systems create a web of security. There are 1,400 remote-controlled steel doors throughout the facility, operated by guards from secure control rooms. But the real genius of ADX Florence is the design of the inside. Each cell is just 7 feet by 12 feet. The walls, floor, ceiling, bed, desk, and stool are all made of a single piece of reinforced concrete. The only metal is a stainless steel mirror, deliberately made non-reflective. Each cell has one window, a 4-inch wide slit, carefully angled so an inmate can never see the ground, another person, or exactly where they are in the building. All you can see is a small piece of sky. Inmates spend 23 hours a day in these cells. Meals are delivered 3 times a day through a small slot in the solid steel door. That's the only time it opens. For the remaining hour, inmates are taken to individual recreation areas, slightly larger concrete spaces with a pull-up bar. They exercise alone. Every movement is a highly controlled procedure, with inmates secured in restraints and escorted by multiple guards. The facility holds around 340 inmates. These aren't ordinary prisoners. These are individuals deemed too high risk for regular maximum security prisons. People convicted of terrorism, espionage, and organized crime leadership. But ADX Florence has 6 different security levels designed to encourage positive behavior. The highest is Range 13, with just 4 cells for those needing the most intensive monitoring. Over time, inmates can earn their way down through the levels, gaining small privileges like a radio or an educational TV. The entire facility operates with precision. The corridors are designed like a maze. The concrete is reinforced with steel. The ventilation system prevents passing messages. Since ADX Florence opened, there has never been a successful escape. Not one. But this raises other questions. What happens to the human mind after years in this environment? What are the psychological effects of extreme isolation? And is there a balance between security and humanity? What's your perspective? Is a facility like this necessary for the highest risk offenders, or should we find different approaches? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the world's most fascinating places. In 2012, something strange was happening at ADX Florence, America's most secure Supermax prison. Lawyers were gathering, psychologists were reviewing files, and medical records were being pulled. They were building a case that would question the very foundation of the prison itself. The question was simple, but incredibly powerful. What does years of total isolation do to the human brain? To understand this, we need to talk about us. Humans are social creatures. We've evolved to live in groups, to communicate, to interact. Our brains don't just enjoy social contact. They literally need it to function properly, just like food or water. Scientists have seen what happens when you take that away. After just a few days of isolation, people have trouble concentrating. Their memory gets fuzzy. Some even start seeing or hearing things that aren't there. Now, imagine that not for a few days, but for years, or even decades. This was the reality for inmates at ADX Florence. And in 2012, a huge lawsuit called Cunningham versus the Federal Bureau of Prisons brought it all into the public eye. For 4 years, this case revealed things about ADX that had never been heard before. Lawyers presented evidence from experts who explained how the brain reacts to extreme isolation. They showed records of inmates who developed severe mental health issues. Some started talking to themselves constantly, others began harming themselves. A few had completely lost touch with reality. The isolation wasn't just tough, it was causing measurable, physical damage to their minds. Psychologists even gave it a name, SHU syndrome, named after the special housing units where inmates are kept. The symptoms were anxiety, depression, rage, and in the worst cases, a total psychological breakdown. The prison, of course, had its own side. They argued that these were dangerous individuals. Many had a history of extreme violence or had mental health issues before they even arrived. The security wasn't punishment. It was necessary to keep everyone safe, including the inmates themselves. And they had a point. These are people regular prisons couldn't handle. The court case forced ADX Florence to make real changes. They had to improve mental health screening and provide more psychological services. They had to prove that keeping someone in extreme isolation was absolutely necessary for security, not just the default setting. But here's the thing. ADX had already been trying to address some of this. Remember the step-down program? That was designed to give inmates a path toward more human contact. But it was a long, hard road. One mistake could send you right back to the start. So, how does daily life actually work inside? The day starts around 6 a.m. with breakfast slid through a slot in the door. No words, just a tray appearing and disappearing. You're alone for hours. Maybe you read. Maybe you do push-ups in your tiny cell. Lunch is the same silent routine. The highlight of your day, or even your week, might be 1 hour of recreation time. You're escorted to a concrete cage, a bit bigger than your cell, where you can see the sky. That 1 hour is everything. Then it's dinner, and the long night begins. The lights never fully go out. The silence is deafening. Days turn into weeks, weeks into months, months into years. The routine never changes. The walls never change. The only thing that changes is you. But here's what's surprising. Some inmates adapt. They create mental routines, set goals, and find ways to maintain their sense of self. The prison offers GED programs and correspondence courses. Religious services are available through video screens. Since the lawsuit, mental health services have expanded, but counseling someone through a door slot is a huge challenge. The system raises a tough question. How do you prepare someone for release after years of this? ADX has a program for that, gradually reintroducing social contact and life skills. But former inmates talk about the lasting anxiety, the trouble being around people, the marks that never fade. This brings us to the core debate. ADX has a perfect security record, no escapes in over 30 years. It does what it was designed to do. But critics, including the United Nations, argue the psychological cost is too high, calling prolonged solitary confinement a form of torture. So, what's the alternative for individuals who pose such an extreme threat? It's a difficult balance between security and humanity, with no easy answers. What do you think? Should prisons prioritize security above all else? Or is there a line that should never be crossed? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching. Right now, about 340 people live at ADX Florence. 340 names, 340 stories, and 340 reasons why the government decided they belong here. But who are they really? What did they do to require this level of security? Let's start with the most well-known category: individuals convicted of terrorism. These are people who planned or carried out attacks designed to hurt large numbers of people. Their cases made headlines around the world. One of the most famous is the person convicted for the Boston Marathon bombing in 2013. That attack injured hundreds and changed lives forever. He's currently held at ADX Florence. Then there's the shoe bomber incident from 2001. A man tried to detonate explosives on a transatlantic flight. He was stopped, but the attempt was so serious that it changed airport security forever. You still have to take your shoes off at the airport because of this case. That individual is at ADX Florence. There are also individuals connected to the September 11th attacks. not the hijackers themselves, but people who helped plan or finance the operation. One person, identified as the 20th hijacker, was arrested before the attacks and is now serving a life sentence at ADX. From international cases, there's someone convicted for plotting to bomb American embassies in East Africa. Those 1998 attacks in Kenya and Tanzania led to hundreds of casualties. These terrorism cases all share something in common. The individuals had connections to organized groups on the outside. Regular prisons couldn't stop them from communicating. ADX Florence's isolation solves that problem. But terrorism isn't the only reason people end up here. Another major category is prison gang leaders. These are organized groups that can be more powerful than the guards themselves, controlling illegal activities and ordering violence. The leaders of these gangs are incredibly hard to manage. Even locked up, they can give orders to their followers. By placing them at ADX Florence, their ability to lead is completely cut off. Then there's a category you might not expect: spies. People who betrayed their country by selling secrets to foreign governments. One famous case involves an FBI agent who was actually spying for Russia for over 20 years. Another involves an intelligence agency employee who sold secrets about American spy satellites. The national security risks were so severe that ADX Florence was deemed the only appropriate place. We also have individuals who ran large-scale organized crime operations. Not small-time criminals, but people who built criminal empires. We're talking about major drug traffickers who coordinated the movement of tons of illegal substances. The most famous recent case involves the head of one of the world's largest drug trafficking organizations. This person had escaped from 2 maximum security prisons before. After being extradited to the U.S., he was sent to ADX Florence. He hasn't escaped since. Another surprising category: individuals who committed serious crimes while already in prison. This includes people who harmed prison staff or coordinated riots and mass violence in other facilities. If someone has proven they can escape from other maximum security prisons, ADX Florence becomes necessary. The facility's perfect security record means these individuals finally stay contained. Now, here's something important to understand. Most of the inmates at ADX Florence are people you've never heard of. Their cases didn't make international news. But each one was evaluated and deemed to require this level of security for specific reasons: a history of escape, continuing to lead criminal organizations, or posing an extreme risk of violence. Sending someone here is expensive, so it's not a decision made lightly. Inmates are constantly being evaluated. If they show good behavior over time, they can move down the security levels and potentially even transfer out. But for some, their crimes were too serious or their risk too high. For them, ADX Florence is a permanent home. The inmates here represent failures of the regular prison system, failures in their own lives, and failures of society to prevent the paths that led them here. ADX Florence is, in many ways, a last resort. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into fascinating topics. When the United Nations got the full picture of ADX Florence, their reaction was swift and sharp. In 2014, a special investigator came to the U.S. to look at the prison system. What he saw at ADX Florence horrified him. His report was blunt. Keeping people in prolonged isolation could be considered a form of torture. You see, the UN has clear guidelines on solitary confinement. They say anything over 15 consecutive days can cause serious, long-lasting psychological harm. At ADX, some inmates have been isolated for years, even decades. This got the world's attention. Human rights groups started criticizing ADX, comparing it to facilities in other countries that America itself had condemned. It was an uncomfortable question. How can the U.S. lecture other nations on human rights while operating a place like this? American officials had a straightforward defense. These aren't your average prisoners. They're individuals who pose an extraordinary security risk. The isolation isn't just punishment. It's a necessary security measure to protect lives. But this whole debate highlights something fascinating. Different countries handle their most dangerous prisoners in vastly different ways. Take Norway, for example, famous for its progressive prisons. Even their most serious offenders live in places that look nothing like ADX. They get education, work programs, and communal activities. The focus is on rehabilitation. At Norway's maximum security prison, inmates cook their own meals and wear regular clothes. And guess what? Their system works. Norway has some of the lowest reoffense rates in the world, but it's a small country of 5 million people. Their entire prison population is smaller than a single large American prison. The challenges are just different. Germany has high-security facilities, but even there, the goal is gradual reintegration. They see isolation as a temporary, last resort tool, not a long-term housing strategy. France is similar. Their laws require meaningful human contact because their courts have ruled that complete isolation violates human dignity, no matter what crime was committed. Meanwhile, the UK has what they call close supervision centers. It's a middle ground, more isolation than a regular prison, but less than ADX Florence. Inmates have some limited interaction with staff and other prisoners. But even the UK has faced lawsuits from inmates claiming the isolation caused mental health damage. The struggle is universal. What makes ADX Florence so unique is its scale and its unwavering commitment to the isolation model. Hundreds of inmates are held there on a permanent basis. Major organizations like Amnesty International and the American Civil Liberties Union have been highly critical. They've filed lawsuits and published reports, not arguing for release, but for more humane ways to maintain security. They point to disturbing research showing that prolonged isolation can physically change the brain. The parts responsible for memory, emotion, and social skills can actually shrink. The damage might be permanent. This leads to a tough question. If we know isolation causes this kind of harm, is it morally right to do it, even to people who have done terrible things? Defenders of ADX fire back with their own question. What's a better alternative that actually works? It's easy to criticize, but much harder to propose a solution that guarantees security. Ideas like more video calls or controlled virtual interactions have been floated. But every single reform has to be weighed against potential security risks. When you're dealing with people who have run criminal empires from behind bars, those concerns are very real. The Bureau of Prisons has made some changes over the years, like improving mental health services and creating a step-down program. But critics say these are just small fixes to a fundamentally broken model. You can't counsel away the damage of isolation. You have to reduce the isolation itself. There's also the cost. ADX Florence is incredibly expensive to run. Some argue that money could be better spent on crime prevention, but others say you can't put a price on security. If ADX prevents even one catastrophic event, it's worth it. Ultimately, this debate is about what we believe justice is. Is it punishment? Rehabilitation? Public safety? Your answer to that question will probably shape your opinion of ADX Florence. Some former inmates have spoken out after being released. They describe the experience as losing yourself piece by piece, of fighting to hold on to reality. Their stories don't excuse their crimes, but they do force us to confront the human cost of extreme isolation. The debate over ADX Florence is far from over. It forces us to balance our society's most fundamental values: security, justice, and humanity. The future of prisons like this is being decided right now, and the outcome will say a lot about who we are. Thanks for watching. If you found this interesting, consider subscribing for more deep dives. It's a cold morning in Florence, Colorado. The sun rises over the Rocky Mountains, casting long shadows across the high desert landscape. From a distance, ADX Florence looks almost peaceful, a modern building nestled in a valley. But inside those walls, hundreds of people are waking up to another day in their concrete cells. Another day exactly like yesterday, and exactly like tomorrow. This has been the reality for over 30 years. But will it be the reality for the next 30? The future of ADX Florence depends on questions America is still trying to answer. Questions about safety, humanity, and what prisons should really be. Let's start with the most practical question. Is ADX Florence still necessary? The security threats that created it in the 1990s haven't disappeared. If anything, they've evolved. International terrorism, organized crime, and sophisticated cyber criminals who could coordinate attacks from behind bars represent ever-present risks. When new high-risk federal prisoners are convicted, where else would they go? The problems ADX Florence was built to solve haven't gone away. But there's another side to this. Technology is changing what's possible in prison security. 30 years ago, extreme isolation was seen as the only way to prevent communication. Today, we have technologies that might offer alternatives. Or virtual reality providing mental stimulation and controlled social interaction, allowing inmates to see family or attend classes without compromising physical security. The technology exists. The question is whether it could work in a place like ADX. Implementing this kind of tech would require enormous investment and years of testing. You can't just experiment with security when the inmates include some of the most dangerous individuals in the country. There's also the question of public opinion. The tough-on-crime era that gave birth to ADX has shifted towards a conversation about criminal justice reform. But does that reform mindset apply to the people held in a Supermax prison? It's a complicated debate. Legal challenges have already forced changes, acknowledging the psychological harm of prolonged isolation. Future lawsuits could push for even stricter limits, forcing ADX to adapt or fundamentally change its model. So what might ADX Florence look like in 30 years? One possibility is that it continues largely as it is, with gradual improvements but the same basic model of isolation for extreme cases. Another possibility is a hybrid approach, with different units offering varying levels of interaction. A third, more futuristic possibility involves that technological transformation we talked about, where virtual programs redefine the inmate experience. The most radical and least likely scenario is that ADX eventually closes or downsizes as new strategies for managing high-risk individuals are proven effective. For the people currently inside, the future is uncertain. For those with life sentences, they are never leaving. For others, there's the question of what happens after release. After 20 years of extreme isolation, can someone successfully rejoin society? The research isn't encouraging. The Bureau of Prisons is developing reentry programs, but resources are limited. The existence of ADX Florence also makes us ask bigger questions. Does it normalize isolation as a punishment, making the entire prison system harsher? Or does it allow other prisons to be less harsh by containing the most difficult cases in one place? Both arguments have some truth. ADX Florence succeeded at its security mission. No escapes in over 30 years is remarkable. But that success came with costs we're still calculating. Perfect security might require conditions that trouble our conscience. But less security could mean dangers we're not willing to accept. The facility challenges us to think about our values: safety, humanity, justice, rehabilitation. We can't maximize all of them at once. The story of ADX Florence is the story of a place built of concrete and steel, of silence and isolation. A place that keeps us safe from dangerous people while making us ask difficult questions about ourselves. The conversation matters, the questions are important, and the search for better answers must continue. If this exploration made you think, make sure you resubscribe so you don't miss our next investigation into the hidden corners of our world.